maintain a healthy environment for your soil? Removing litter to encourage a healthy soil. In 2022, I was approached about litter and gardening. Many people felt it was their responsibility to maintain their garden beds, but not their responsibility to collect the litter in the immediate area. However, litter can impact our soils in which we grow our flowers, but also in the soils we grow our food. The impact of plastics and litter on our oceans and waterways is very well known. There are thousands of studies and an overwhelming amount of information available. Ask anyone about the impact of litter from school age to adult, and they have all heard or read about the devastating effects litter has on our oceans, fish, and beaches. However, ask them about the impact of plastic and litter on land, and they talk about how it looks ugly, that it's dirty, that it's annoying to clean up. When they are asked if they ever thought about what impact was on our soil, our plants, and our wildlife, not many of them have considered the impact of litter on the land based environment beyond the aesthetics. To appreciate the impact of litter on our soils, it is important to understand what a healthy soil and a healthy soil structure looks like. We need to understand that as more plastic is dumped into the environment and as it builds up over time, more and more chemicals are leached into soil, wreaking havoc on organic life. Microplastics are referenced all the time regarding the impact they have on our oceans, but microplastics exist in our soils also and can impact this rich environment. Soil health can be defined in many ways. I wanted to fall back on the building blocks of a healthy soil environment. When I first learned the term soil food web, I was so completely intrigued that I went into my garden and cut a square out and to look at it and realized that our soil, my soil, was very much alive. Our soil is populated by trillions of living organisms, which directly and indirectly depend on plants and plant roots to obtain food, and in turn, plant roots depend on these organisms to provide valuable nutrients for them to grow and eat. The soil in which we plant, whether it be flowers, trees, or vegetables, is an environment that is very much alive. Without these living organisms, our soil will die and become lifeless and prone to drought and erosion. To maintain a healthy soil, we need to understand a poorly structured soil versus a well structured soil. Simply think of your soil like a sponge. If it is well structured, it is porous, it is alive with worms and other organisms working their way through the sponge's holes. Well-structured soil allows for easy root penetration, allowing roots of plants to easily grow deeply into the soil. It will hold water in the channels in the soil. Together, this protects the soil against drought, desertification, and soil erosion. A poorly structured soil is the exact opposite of our sponge. It is like a brick. It does not absorb water well, so the water pools at the top and penetrates very little. But there are not channels for the water to penetrate deep into the ground. The hard soil does not allow for worms, air, or other organisms to live freely in it to contribute to the soil food web. Roots cannot penetrate easily and so leads to poor plant growth or no plant growth in some cases. This kind of soil leads to drought conditions, desertification, and soil erosion. What was astounding to me in this journey of research is that we know that litter is not good for our ecosystems. It has been widely studied at the marine level, but I was surprised to find so little readily available information on the effects of litter on our soils. However, what I did find reinforced what I had already knew, as well as furthering my knowledge of the potential impact of litter on the health of our soils. Soil gives us life-sustaining plants and foods. These life-sustaining plants and foods depend upon the soil. The structure needed to grow these plants depends on the trillions of creatures and organisms living within. Charles Kellogg said, essentially all life depends upon the soil. There cannot be life without soil, and no soil without life. They have evolved together. So, what can happen when litter meets soil? One of the first results I found was on the infamous plastic bags. Of course, disposable plastic bags have been banned in our province for a couple of years now, but we are still finding them in litter cleanups. Plastic bags represented, and in some parts of the world still represent, a large part of the plastic litter on land. Plants or soil are not protected from the harm caused by bags or plastic pollution. When plastics break down in the soil, they release harmful chemicals such as phthalates, bisphenol A or BPA that can harm natural microorganisms that plants are dependent upon for survival. BPA is amongst one of the most common plastic chemical ingredients found in soil leachate. Requiring up to 1,000 years for decomposition, plastic spends the duration of this time leaching contaminants into the soil and groundwater. So let's come back to this image for just a second. We know that this is the soil food web. In the soil food web, everything works together to help create a healthy environment. A healthy soil is well structured because it is alive with worms, bacteria, enzymes, insects, and all other sorts of organisms. So, what would happen to this living soil community if we were to introduce a contaminant? So let's take a look at the impacts of BPA on worms and the soil food web. Worms represent the main animal biomass in the soil and plays an integral role in creating a healthy, well-structured soil. When looking for information on the impact of BPA or bisphenol A, what we find is that there is a negative impact on this worm biomass. For serious exposures, the expression of one epigenetic related gene was altered for both whole body tissues and male reproductive organs of worms. Epigenetics is the study of how your behavior and environment can cause changes that affect the way your genes work, not change your actual genes and DNA. Unlike genetic changes, epigenetic changes are reversible and do not change your DNA sequence, but they can change how your body reads a DNA sequence. The molecular changes found in the analyzed earthworms indicate that exposure to BPA may have negative implications in their populations. It also suggests that future generations of worms may be impacted. The effects of BPA on soil life have been poorly assessed, and further research will be necessary to better understand the true environmental impact to our soil food web. We know about the terrible plastic soup brewing in our oceans, which is accounting for the death of 100 million marine animals each year. And we are already seeing how equally harmful it is above water as well, just with the example of the plastic bag that can spend a lifetime leaching harmful chemicals into our soils, disrupting the microorganisms. Removing a plastic bag from the environment is simple as picking it up and disposing of it properly as soon as possible. However, there are other plastics which are making their way into our environment that are not as easily removed once they have made their way in. Microplastics. Microplastics are small pieces of plastic less than 5 millimeters in length that occur in the environment because of plastic pollution. Microplastics are present in a variety of products from cosmetics to synthetic clothing to plastic bags and bottles. Microplastics enter our environment in so many ways, litter just being one of them. Microplastics are created by the degradation of larger plastic products once they enter the environment through the natural weathering process. Plastics is one of the top littered items which we find. Such sources of microplastics and secondary microplastics in our soil include single-use water and soda bottles, single-use coffee cups and lids from our single-use cups, straws and of course plastic bags. Some of the places we are finding microplastics. which are really astounding, is bees. It's not known if bees are collecting microplastics when collecting pollen or while flying in the air. Henderson Island, which is a UNESCO World Heritage Site that has no human inhabitants. Despite this, experts believe that there are more than 37 million plastic fragments littering the island. Crabs have been using some of the plastic pieces as new shells when they outgrow their old shells. The Mariana Trench is the deepest body of water on Earth. Researchers took water samples from the bottom of the trench and found microplastics. In 1 liter sample, thousands of tiny plastic particles were discovered. Researchers allegedly found a plastic bag floating in the water at a depth of 6.8 miles. Microplastics are literally appearing everywhere, in everything, even our soils. Researchers in Germany are warning that the impact of microplastics in soils, sediments, and fresh water could have a long term negative effect on such ecosystems. They say terrestrial microplastic pollution is much higher than marine microplastic pollution, estimated at 4 to 23 times higher, depending on the environment. Sewage is an important factor in the distribution of microplastics. In fact, between 80% and 90% of the plastic particles contained in sewage, such as from garment fibers, persist in the sludge. Sewage sludge is often applied to fields as a fertilizer, meaning that several thousand tons of microplastics end up in our soils each year. The surfaces of tiny fragments of plastic may carry disease-causing organisms and act as a vector for disease in the environment. Microplastics can also interact with soil fauna, affecting their health and soil functions. Earthworms, for example, make their burrows differently when microplastics are present in the soil, affecting the earthworm's fitness and the soil condition. Land and soil microplastic pollution has led to the decrease of species that live below the surface, such as mites, larvae, and other tiny creatures that maintain soil fertility and structure. The soil is the great connector of our lives, the source and destination of all. Wendell Berry. There is something very special about working with a healthy, well structured, and living soil environment. There is a level of connectivity with the earth and that which grows in it, that which it provides to us. Thank you.